Okay, so this isn't really a review video in the sense that we've done this. I mean, we've done LINQ, but the whole purpose of this is I didn't have enough time in class to really go over all of what you can do in LINQ. And that's because we just don't have enough time to do everything. So I did want to take some time to have a video just so we could refresh what LINQ does, and I could show you some new things I didn't get time to show you, so that you can use LINQ in all of its glory. All right, so I just made up some methods, some actions in the controller, just for the purposes of like examples. They don't actually like really do anything, but I just have their names. So we have our database context. So for example, I want to get all employees. I can do context. I'm actually going to make all these synchronous. That'll be easier for me. Okay, type all that stuff out. So we're going to do context.employees.toList. This gives you all employees. This is exactly the same as select star from employees. Okay, you need to like conceptually put LINQ and SQL and think of them like kind of together. Like LINQ is mapped to SQL. You know, these are equivalent to each other. So like if you could visualize select star from employees in SQL, you can visualize what .toList is doing. Okay? So that way you can kind of think of what you're being returned, because you're being returned data. It's a bunch of C# objects, but if you can like also think of it in terms of like rows in like a table, that will also be helpful. All right, so you can get a list of employees. You can also order your list. So you can be like context.employees.order by, and then you pick a property like age, for example. Okay, and they'll order it by their age. If you want it in a different, if you don't want to go in this order, you can order by descending. And remember, the list is after order by, the list is necessary to make the list. Okay, so this would get all the employees, but put them in order by their age, lowest to highest. This would be highest to lowest. So whatever order you want to do, that's what you can do. All right, so that's what you can do with the list. You can go further with it. You can, for example, get employee by ID. So if you want to do that, there's kind of two ways to do it. You could do context. And again, this is more for like your example, not to actually run it. But so context dot employees dot find, and then we'll just say, for example, let's say like this method takes an ID, and so we'll do find by ID. Okay, find works on primary keys that are integers. So if your table has an integer as a primary key, then this will work. If it is not found, it is null. It returns null. So if I did, for example, employee E is equal to context employees that find, if there is an employee with its ID, then this will be an employee. If it does not find it, then E will be null. So you have to remember that. That's a key point with working with LINQ, is that you need to know what these things give you back. And it will mostly like tell you, like especially when you have like these green warnings, it'll be like, hey, bro, this could be null. So we'll see, like exactly see where it says returns the entity found or null. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're using these. If you don't like find, you can use a where clause. So you could do context.employees.where x.id is equal to ID. Now here's the kicker. What comes after this is where like I think you guys have a little bit get tripped up, because I've been teaching you a bunch of things. Let's do first or default. Here's what first or default does. Okay, so we go through our employees. This is a filter. You need to think of this as a filter. Like, I only want employees with this ID. So if they don't have this ID, I don't want them anymore. Of the employees whose ID is this, give me the first one in the list. If you don't find it, then give me null. That is what first or default does. You have employees, they're in a list. In this case, we sort them by ID, and then we say give me the first one. Single order default would also work as well. Where x.id is equal to id dot single or default. Okay, then we hover over it. Okay. The problem with single or default is if there's more than one element in the sequence, what that means is you have this here, right? Let's say you had, now this wouldn't happen in reality. So like for this, it'd be fine because there's only going to be one employee with this ID. So if you only expect there to be one row, like one thing that this where clause would give you, you can use single or default. If you think there would be more, you can use first or default. So let's use a different example. Let's do context.employees.where x.age is greater than 60. Okay, this would be a good time to use first or default if you just, like, let's say you just want one, right? You don't want the whole list, because we want the list, we do to list. Let's say I just want one. Here, you could use first or default. And it would give you the first person in the list whose age is over 60. Now, does that mean that there's other people in the list whose age is over 60? Could be. This where filters out everybody whose age is not over 60. It's a filter. It gets rid of things that don't meet this condition. So could there be more than one person whose age is over 60 in this list of employees? Absolutely. But we just get the first one of them. You couldn't use single or default in this case because this list of people could be more than one. Single or default is where you only expect there to be one. So it's great for this ID. Because primary keys are by definition unique. So if I match it by ID, there should only be one employee that fits this condition, in which case I can use single or default. Okay, review the video and listen to that again if that's difficult to understand. But you have to sort of think of this where just like in SQL, right? Like if I go in SQL and I have my employees, and let's do it like select all from employees. That LINQ where is this where. They're the same thing. Age is over 60. These employee. Okay, well, employee, great. This where in SQL is exactly the same where as it is in LINQ. They're doing exactly the same thing. They're filtering out rows you don't want. Because I do select all from employee, I get all the employees. If I do a where clause, it filters out the rows I don't want. That's what where does. These are the same thing. Okay, so remember, first or default is if you expect there to be more than one thing, you can use that. Single or default is where you only expect there to be one thing. Otherwise, it will throw an exception. I stay away from single or default. I always use first or default if I want one thing. If you want everything or multiple things, you're going to have to use to list. Okay, now you can filter things more. So you can be like context.employees.distinct, and you can even pick. If you do distinct employees, we need to actually like let's see where x.age is over. Like you can do, like employees.distinct would just give you distinct employees by, let's see. So it'd be the same thing as select all from employee, select all, distinct all from employee. I don't think you can do this. Yep, there we go. So distinct all from employee. So, oops. In this case, it would filter out any duplicates. It's usually distinct is also really good with select. So I'm going to actually use select with this. So let's say I go through my employees and I select their ages. And I want them all. All right. Okay. Notice how I hover over this. See how this is a list of integers? Okay, it's not a list of employees. It's a list of integers. This select is just selecting a column. I'm just selecting the ages of the employees, not the actual employees themselves, just their ages. It's the same thing as if I did this. Select age from employee. See how this only gives me back their age. I don't get back any of the other columns. I just get the one column. Okay, this is the same thing. You can further filter it with distinct. Distinct makes more sense in this case. So dot distinct, and that means that if there's more than one age, like if there's two people who are 70 years old, it will filter out one of them. Okay, it will have a unique age in the list. But remember, when you're doing select, you're not going to get back the actual object. Okay, you're just going to get back what you select. Okay, I'm selecting the age. It means I'm just getting that column, not getting the employees. Okay, that's a big mental shift from what you guys have been doing. All right. But again, go back to SQL. This is what's being returned. Okay. Notice how you can't do a full employee because you don't have the other columns with which to fill that data in anyway. All right. So you can use another two methods I didn't teach you guys in class, but I want to teach you now is so for example, var first two employees is equal to context dot employees dot take two. Okay, to list. All right, take will basically it does what it says it does. You have a list of employees. Let's say you have 5 employees. It will give you back the first 2. Okay, it's very similar to select top 2 star from employee. See how it gave me the first 2 and didn't give me the third? Okay, take is exactly the same thing. Take is select top star and then you tell it how many, like 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. Okay, that will do test take, and so it's exactly the same thing as select top number star from something. It's exactly the same SQL query. Okay, so take and this are exactly the same thing. Okay, you can skip them. Skip 1. Okay, this will give you a list of employees, but it will skip the first one. So if Bob was first in the list, this new list of employees will not contain Bob because Bob was first in the list and we skipped him. Okay, I don't think I need this anymore. Oh yeah, I did these 2 selects anyway. We don't need these 2 anymore. But so skip is cool because skip allows you to be like, hey, I don't want the first one or the first 2 in the list. After that, I'll take everything. Take will start taking them from the beginning of the list until it stops, and it'll give you only those ones. So take and skip are very useful. Select is probably the most mind-bending one. And you can select, again, you select a column, so a property of that object, and you're not going to get the object back. Okay, so this age list is a list of integers, not a list of employees. That's the biggest mistake people make with select. Okay, and you guys know where, and again, where is for filtering out rows based on the condition. So like age is over 60, and x dot salary is over 1,000 or whatever. Okay, you can keep going. Okay, it's just like the where clause in SQL. It's no different. Just you filter out the stuff you don't want. Order by descending, and then to list. Again, rule of thumb is if you're going to get more than one back, use to list. Okay, to list is your friend. If you want to get one back, then first or default is usually your friend. It's the one you would want. Single or default exists. But the thing with single or default is you can only use it when you expect the thing it's running on to only have one object in it. If it has more than one, it's going to give you an exception. I tend to stay away from single or default. It's fine for like primary keys, like this would be perfect because ID is a primary key, and so I know ID is unique. So if it finds somebody, there's only going to be one. So single or default is good for that. If it's where I expect there to be more than one, like for example, age is over 60 and salary is over to or equal to 1,000, then I would use first as default because this part could be more than one employee easily. So if there's a possibility there could be more than one, we never use singular default because it will throw an exception. Just use first. All right. So this is a crash course back to the LINQ. And again, I want you to start thinking about LINQ in terms of SQL. That's why I had SQL Server Management Studio up and showing you like the SQL queries that LINQ is like that Entity Framework is running. Entity Framework works hand in hand with LINQ to give you back data that you need. There are much more to LINQ still, but I wanted to make certain that you got this this part down. And I also added in distinct, select, take, and skip, which I didn't get to go over too much in class. So that way you can have this and be able to use it before we move on to TypeScript and do something completely different. All right, I'll push this to GitHub so you can see these examples, and that should be good.